Is older always better? All this and more coming up on This Week in Retro.
High-resolution color graphics.
This land of high technology.
The revolution in technology that made the information age possible.
Those kids are not afraid of computers.
Throw Me An Xbone.
Rare Microprose cab repaired.
And growing old disgracefully.
All these stories and lots more coming up on today's show.
Up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.
Hello, Dave. How are you doing?
Hello, Neil. I am starting to feel better. How are you?
I'm starting to feel worse. You may detect a slight cold on me. I'm being bombarded by all the germs from the nursery now that the little ones go in there. So that's great.
Well, I think you've got a few years of that.
Yes.
Thank you for allowing us a break. I have an update from Duncan on his week off. Said he had a nice week with lots of walking and nice food. Stayed at a lodge in the grounds of Blenheim Palace.
Oh, posh Duncan.
And visited Clarkson's farm and his pub. So, hope you had a nice week, Duncan. That's why we weren't here last week.
I was gifted some of Clarkson's farm's beer recently, and it was very nice, actually.
I understand he's doing a good job of it.
Yeah. It was a nice tasting beer. Yeah.
How was your week off?
Week off? Well, I was back to work, but yes, week off twere. So in the cave, I was working on the Arcadia, which is the Amiga-based arcade system.
Oh, yeah.
Ties to Mastertronic. That was my first video since returning, and it seems to have gone down well. And I'm very pleased to say that I've had contact from somebody who was a game dev on the old games for that system, so I'm going to have a chat with them. I've had contact from someone who has one of the cabinets that I'm looking for, so we can actually give it an authentic housing. So there's good progress being made on that, which is great. This is why I love the Trash to Treasures so much and making it episodic, because with each episode, it prompts people to come forward and give more information. So that works really well. And I'm just wrapping up an episode about an old game dev's Mega ST, and it's broken, completely knackered, and there are some treasures to be found on the hard disk which won't even spin. So I'm trying to see what I can recover with interesting results.
Do you need a donor Mega ST?
No, I do have another one.
Okay.
I've had them side by side with the probe out, trying to figure out where the problems are. Progress is being made, and I'm at the point of just editing up that first episode for that. So yeah, really nice to be back and getting stuck into some really meaty content.
I've been preparing for something special this weekend. I'm going to a castle for a party. Terrible Bites, Terrible Fire, who made the accelerator, is having a party. Loads of people are going. I know you were invited, Neil, but you going these days is almost impossible, isn't it?
I really want to go. Couldn't make it last year. Can't make it this year, maybe next year, but it looks like a lot of fun.
I hope to be streaming from it to some extent, not me, but streaming something happening at it. But also on Saturday, a lot is happening. We're both appearing on an event for More Fun Making It. Lee does, he did this last year, themed around the Spectrum, and this year it's themed around Commodore. He's going to be streaming from 11 a.m. until 11 p.m. British summertime, although it doesn't feel much like summer just now, with auctions completing during the 12 hours. Lots of stuff there. A Kim 1, so that's MOS Technologies' first single-board computer, all the way up to an Amiga 1200 in a Checkmate 1500 plus case, and that's the business if you want that.
All the way up, Dave, all the way up to an Amiga A520 TV modulator sealed in bag.
Who's donated that prize?
I mean, I don't like to brag, but I think I've been quite generous in donating that prize to the auctions. So if anyone wants a very special A520 TV modulator, it's all for a good cause. Get those bids in.
There is also, and Lee mentions, last year I auctioned some mugs that sold for over £250, and this year there's more, including, he says, the best mug in the world. He says, More Fun Making It unique, one-off, bespoke, custom-made mug, which will be ending at 6:20 BST during the section we're calling Dave's House Party, which is my apparently 2-hour section on this.
Will that be Mr. Blobby?
I hope so. I'm Mr. Blobby. He also says there's another mug ending 5 minutes before that one with something about this week in retro on it.
Oh.
But I'm sure nobody wants that. And we're here to tell you Lee's wrong. You want the This Week in Retro special, bespoke, specially created for this event by an artisan. The special mug will be revealed on stream. It will blow you away. You will want to get this one-off opportunity to have it. Make sure you pay more for it than the more fun making it rubbish mug. The stream is on today. So if you're watching this now, on the day it's released, the stream is on now. Switch to it. Watch this later. Finish watching it first. And then switch to Lee's stream and buy lots of stuff. Give him lots of money. The money is going to be raised for the Befriending Scheme. So the Befriending Scheme provides friendship and learning opportunities for vulnerable people across Suffolk, including those with learning disabilities, mental health needs, and other isolated groups. Lee's son Thomas, who's been on before.
Hello, Thomas.
Yeah, hello, Thomas. Hope you're watching this. Visits and works at the Red Rose Community Farm in Suffolk, and they're raising money to fund miniature donkeys. Donkeys, Neil. Are you a donkey?
No comment, Dave.
So yeah, watch that. Go and enjoy it. It'll be a great event, and I'll be on there, I think, from 5 until 7. I think I'm on there. Excellent. When are you on, Neil?
Between, I think, 2 and 5, something like that. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of us in. I've been put into the hardware section. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be fun. You can find the link in the show notes, or just go to Twitch and search for More Fun Making It, and it'll pop up as a live stream that's happening right now. So look out for that, and let's go into our first story.
I've never owned a modern console, or I've never owned a console while it's been modern and contemporary. In fact, I've not even gone back and got an Xbox or a PlayStation. I have once or twice had a look on eBay and thought maybe I should get one and put it away so that I have it in case they get expensive. But today's story, I think, tells me not to. It was clear from the launch of the PlayStation from Sony that these kinds of consoles were different than the cartridge type that we'd seen from the 2600 up to the SNES and the Mega Drive, etc. They were based on optical discs, and they are the same type of consoles, really, that we're seeing now. Discrete graphics, as well as the processor, and now they're pretty much PCs inside. And I think the reason why I didn't have one is because of the types of games that I played. By the time that I finished with my Atari ST and moved into the PC, I was into RPGs, strategy, and adventure almost exclusively. A few years later, and the internet came along for me, and I played online RPG games, starting with MUDs heavily for years, and then eventually finishing with EVE Online before I packed all the online games in and said, no, I need my life back. And by then, the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3 were the current consoles, and that type of console gaming was thoroughly established by then. Now, I know your history is different than mine, Neil. I know that you like your RPGs, but I'm always surprised by how well-rounded your experience is with retro. You've had your hand in everything. When people were in consoles, you were in consoles. When I was playing RPGs, you were playing RPGs. Tell us about your console history.
Oh, well, that's sort of a bit of a mixture of modern and history is the sort of the knowledge I've picked up along the way. Because for a start, how modern is modern? When you say, tell me about your modern console history.
How modern is modern?
Yeah.
Well, modern is at the time when it's been sold in the shops.
Okay, so right. Okay, so we're going any era then, really, just when it's current. So 8 and 16-bit consoles, I didn't own, but I had access to all of them on my estate, and I was young enough to just spend all my days playing games with friends, so that was fine. PlayStation, when that came about, I would rent it from the video shop.
The PlayStation, not the discs, but the actual machine.
The actual machine with Point Blank and a light gun, or with Gran Turismo. They were my favorite things to rent. And of course, we still had a CRT, in the family lounge at the time. So plug that in, play some light gun games. Dreamcast, a friend just left one at my house for a year, so I had a chance to play on that a lot, as you do. PlayStation 2, I did buy. Xbox, I bought. Xbox 360, I bought. Beyond that, then, I went back to consoles at friends' houses. PlayStation 3 era, we're talking Call of Duty, zombie mode and beers. We're into that era. And PC first and foremost. I mean, the PC has been the constant after the Amiga, moving into PC. Whenever I've had consoles, the PC has always been there. That's always been my favoured platform, despite its annoyances and its foibles and all the tweaking that goes with it and all the rest of it. I've always enjoyed the simplicity of console gaming. And then the lines get blurred in the modern day because things like the PC Engine, I never had access to back in the day, but I retrospectively have enjoyed it and played it to death through emulation. So that's filled those gaps in my knowledge. So lots of systems I've got more knowledge of now through playing in the modern day through emulators than when it was current. And then if we get to the current consoles, very little experience, I don't have many friends these days who say, hey, Neil, do you want to come and hang out and play on my PlayStation 5? Because nobody's got time for that as an adult, especially with the, kid around now and everything like that. So my modern console experience is very limited. Have you played on a PlayStation 5?
No, I know that my nephew has one, but I've never played on it with him.
I've got a Switch. I enjoy the Switch, but that's much more casual. I can just pick up and play.
Yeah, but you're surprisingly well-rounded. You've had the PC the whole time and been in playing consoles, whereas I think most people tend to be one or the other.
Yeah, and that's not because of affluence or anything like that. It was just because access through friends or the video rental store.
So today's submission is from Dr. Local, and it's about Xbox One emulation on the PC. So this is right up my street.
So we're talking 2013 Xbox. That's the Xbox One, isn't it?
Yes, the Xbox One. So it went 1, 360, 1, and X.
Of course.
Yeah. The Amiga school of numbering. And I mean by that, Amiga Workbench numbers went backwards. The Xbox, of course, as I'm sure you all know, is a Microsoft console that was fairly similar to a PC in terms of hardware. And I think this is now settled as the right way to do it because the PlayStation and Xbox have stuck to this format. A CPU and a GPU, and not tech just developed for the console. Well, mostly not tech just developed for the console. Tech developed for other things, and then they'll make a model for the consoles. So emulation should be easier, you think, and that's how it seems to work with this Xbox One emulator. So, as Neil said there, it's the 2013 one. It's actually the Xbox 3. They can't name anything properly these days. And it came out a little over 10 years ago. Now, the project is called Xwine 1, which is an Xbox One translation layer for Windows PCs. I'm presuming they called it Wine because that's what the tools for Linux and Unix-like operating systems, before I get comments, that allow Windows use on those. And it's important to say that while this, yes, can be called an emulator, it's probably best not to call it an emulator and call it a compatibility thing, because the Xbox One really is a PC running a custom version of Windows, and this allows you to do that on a PC.
Yeah, Wine is quite a meta acronym, isn't it? Because I believe it stands for Wine is not an emulator.
Well, there we go.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten that. Wish I'd remembered that when I wrote my notes. It would have fitted in nicely there.
No, compatibility layer is exactly the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Currently 6 games work on it. And of course, you'd be thinking, sitting there shouting and saying, Dave, Xbox One games are available on PC nearly all the time. And that's true. And you're right. That's true. Most of the time they are. But I hope it means that things will remain compatible as things change. And these games will be perhaps not easily playable on the PC, but they will be playable through this compatibility layer. But I also want to point out what's interesting here is that the Xbox One apparently has good emulation for the 360 and the original Xbox. This means that this project, in time, can hopefully become a place to go and get all of the Xbox library. Now, it's not ready for use yet. It's not out. This is just the first developer who's doing one of these to announce that they're going to do it. Apparently, there's other ones in the oven. There's going to be competition for it. But it's really interesting to hear that this could be, nobody's promising this is the case, but this could be the way that Xbox is emulated on a PC.
Xbox One, was it backwards compatible with Xbox 360? Because Xbox 360 was IBM's Power PC-based CPU, wasn't it?
I don't know. I just know that I've read up on this, that there's good emulation. Good and robust was what I read for the 360 and the original Xbox.
I'm just wondering if through a compatibility layer for Xbox One on a PC, can you then get backwards compatibility for Xbox 360 through it?
Well, I hope that's the case.
I guess you just load up an Xbox 360 emulator. Why would you do it that way? But it's good that it exists. There will still be the problems tied in with some of these games having dependencies on online services. They weren't there.
Yeah. There's going to be that period from the mid-00s onwards where games just don't work because they need an online service.
But it will give you access to things like Forza, Halo 5, some of those Xbox exclusives, and games which are that big and have that much of a following. They'll get hacked away at. There'll be fan servers. There'll be ways, tools and ways to get them to work. It's perhaps the smaller games that you might have trouble with.
This is the ideal way to do it, rather than on an original Xbox 3. Xbox One, sorry. You can't have the hacks on that so easily compared to this compatibility layer that could see, oh, you're trying to run this bit of software which we know doesn't work because it needs a server. We'll just stick this little program in here that will answer its calls and get it working. So that might be ideal for that. As a non-expert on consoles, I'm going to say that the current generation of consoles, that's the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, the Xbox 4, are not desirable to emulate. If the Xbox One, that's the Xbox 3, is barely justifiable by a few games, then these ones even less so. I know it's a joke. I keep seeing people talking about there's no games for the PS5, and I think what they mean is there's very few exclusives these days on the PS5. The idea is that they try and have exclusive games so you have to buy the console, and that's not as compelling now as what it was. So maybe this Xbox 3 emulator is the one that is the last one that we really need. I don't know. Link in the show notes, but it's not ready yet for download. Don't go looking to get it now.
This Week in Retro is sponsored by the wonderful people at Pixel Addict magazine. And I can see you've dropped in the show notes here, Dave, a screenshot from Australian Chris. Good day, mate. And what was that all about, Dave?
Well, he's apparently put his crayon to paper and written an article about why he likes to load games from cassette. And I've not read it yet, but I'm looking forward to reading this because I've watched Chris talk about it in his videos. For people who know who Chris is from watching This Week in Retro but haven't watched his channel, Chris tends to focus quite heavily on things that as he used to do it, it's important to him to do things in the way that he used to do it. So loading from cassette and so on. And when he talks about it, you can really understand why he says that. You can really understand why he does it. So this article will be really interested to hear him justifying why loading games from cassette is still a good thing. There's loads of Pixel Addict news this week. They've
got binders available now. So you can get a lovely yellow binder to keep your Pixel Addict magazines in at the website pixel.addict.media. And then for the binders, it's then /shop/pixel-addict-magazine-binder.
Which games company do you think is their front cover this month?
Oh, I don't know. Shall I have a guess?
Have a guess, and let's say it's covered in your next story.
Microprose.
Well done.
Yeah.
It's a Microprose special edition at this time.
Oh, that'll be interesting because you've got classic Microprose, who I know and love, and you've got modern Microprose, who are a bit of an unknown quantity that seem to be making a lot of noises about a lot of games, but the ones I want never get released. Talking about the VR version of B17 that was announced 5 years ago.
So colonization, civilization, pirates, F1 GP, Fields of Glory, Roller Coaster Tycoon, and F-19 Stealth Fighter.
Yes, all the flight sims.
Yeah. But they've also announced something really special. They've announced a collector's edition. They haven't actually announced it. Sorry, I'm a liar.
Are you announcing it?
No, I'm not announcing it either. I'm talking about it, but I'm not officially announcing it because they've not officially announced it. Atari Addict magazine. It's happening, Neil. It's happening.
Excellent.
A one-off, 100% unofficials. Atari Addict is coming out. It's a lovely looking thing. It looks like they've made it look like an Atari cartridge. It's not officially announced yet. I'll put a link in the show notes. They'll go and buy it anyway, but they will officially announce it, and it'll be a one-off run, although I'm sure it'll be so successful that they'll drop Amiga Addict in favour for Atari Addict, as the way it should be.
Good.
Where can people go?
Pixel.addict.media, and we thank them for supporting the show. Yes, my story is about Microprose because just down the road from the cave is a little village called Tetbury. It's a typical Cotswold village with a market square and a village pump, which I know always makes Dave and Duncan happy.
Pump.
The village pump.
What's her name?
Rob Smith, if you're listening, could you add a village
Rob Smith is a village pump?
I'd like him to add the village pumps layer to retro.directory so you and Duncan can see where all the village pumps are and town pumps up and down the country. I'm sure he'll do that for us. But once upon a time, Tetbury was home to the UK arm of one of the most successful games publishers in the world, Microprose. There was a Microprose branded video game shop in the village, right at the centre of it. It had a small office, and then later it was migrated to a warehouse on the outskirts. Locations that I made a pilgrimage some time ago to when I made a video about some unreleased beta and test discs that I had from Microprose, because people used to rummage through the bins outside. And I say pilgrimage, it was a 5-mile drive. It's that close to the cave. So it's no wonder that some of these discs from the bins outside the office made their way to me in time. But when I was exploring this history, I came across a YouTube video of the old offices taken on someone's camcorder. This was the staff of the early 90s in the offices, larking around, looking uncomfortable on camera, as they so often do on this old footage. And for a short moment, there was a glimpse of an arcade machine in the offices. It was a Microprose F-15 Strike Eagle arcade. Now, F-15 Strike Eagle was a popular flight sim published on home computers, but this was in arcade form. It looked like the kind of game that would have left me drooling at the time. Smooth moving, shaded polygons, a flight stick, throttle. It was never going to give a full sim experience in an arcade cabinet for 20p or 50p a go. Or dare I say, even a pound perhaps for this kind of experience. It had to be simplified for the arcade, but it still excited the hell out of me a lot more than Afterburner when I look at that kind of game. So what became of this arcade? Because I never saw it in the arcades, and I doubt many of you did. Well, it appears that it was completed. It made it out the door, but it either didn't get any further than testing, or it was just massively unpopular with uncivilized players of games like Street Fighter 2.
Barbarians.
Barbarians, yeah.
Ghastly.
ROMs of the game have been dumped, and it is supported in MAME, but I've always wanted to know more about this game. And now, thanks to Phil Bennett, I can. So Phil keeps a blog about all of his repairs, and this week he shared that he has got a complete cabinet of this. And when I say complete, you know, it's the real deal. This doesn't look like a prototype. This looks like a completed cabinet. And he takes us through the repair process as well as the specs of the machine with lots of photos along the way. And indeed, it was Phil himself who actually added support to MAME for this game, so he knows it very, very well. The game runs on a huge stack of PCBs, including one which is a 16 megahertz 68,000 CPU. So that handles the game's logic, the I/O, things like that. There's another PCB which is amusingly called Dr. Math, American, so math. And
Digital Research Math, maybe?
No, I think it's just called Dr. Math. Maybe, I don't know. Read the blog and find out. And actually, this is where a lot of his focus for his repair is on. So we find out a lot about this board. It handles all the 3D maths, drives the 3D hardware, and it contains something called an AM2900 chip running at 16 megahertz. And that's a RISC CPU, something we don't see in many arcade machines of that era, 1991. There's another PCB for 2D graphics and 6 ASICs dedicated to the 3D rendering. So the result is a flight sim of a medium resolution, 576 by 400, which looks blooming lovely. Especially notable are the canyons, the hills and the mountains that litter the landscape when our home versions of it were distinctly flat. Phil gets into the nitty-gritty of the repair, and it's well worth a read, even if most of us can't keep up with his technical skills. There's plenty to enjoy along the way, and it culminates in a video clip of the repaired system running, so you can see what it's all about. Dave, I was pleased when I was reading this block to see that inside the arcade was not an Amiga, unlike the ungodly Arcadia system that I'm working on at the moment. It's very much a bespoke system, and I do wonder if the setup was used in any other 3D games of the era. It seems quite advanced for 1991. Have you had a look? What did you make of it? And are there any other games of home computer origins? Have we had this question before? But I'll ask it again. Home computer origins that you think should get a dedicated arcade cabinet?
Well, I've had a look at it, yeah. And it's funny you say it's not an Amiga, but it sounds like an Amiga when you describe it. It's a 68000 controlling everything, and it has very powerful coprocessors there, which is what an Amiga is. But it's also what a lot of arcade machines are.
Yeah, you could say that of something like Sega System 16 and things like
loads
that.
of those were 68000 at the heart of it, which is what we had in the home micros, but they have a bank of incredibly powerful stuff as well. I'd like to see Driller or Dark Side.
Mr. Driller?
Not Mr. Driller. That one can be missed. Dark Side, Total Eclipse, a Freescape game in the arcade. That would have been great at the time. Something really powerful running it.
I think if virtuality had taken off, maybe they would have been well suited there with VR goggles.
Could be. Could be. A flight sim in a cabinet, playing a typical arcade way, we know with 20 pence a go or 3 credits for 50p is a terrible idea.
Yes, I agree.
It's a romantic idea. I like the idea of it, but it's not commercially viable. I
mean, for that kind of experience, you want to know you're going for that experience. You want to know you're going for a Krypton Factor type flight sim experience where you've got the full flight deck and you're trying to land it, and you know the technology is more advanced than anything you can get at home.
It's difficult.
This was just going to be in an arcade.
Yeah. I do like how bombastic it felt. They had that cool American accent going. The American accent you don't hear now. I don't know what the accent is specifically. I don't know if it's got a particular location, but it's got this cool American accent going on. But I notice it's saying, insert coin and press start to buy more missiles. Get that out. No chance.
You're practically arms dealing at that point.
There's not much in the way between a 90s home computer, perhaps with a flight stick. Now, not a fight stick. This isn't Street Fighter 2. A flight stick. Maybe a throttle to at most, but that's all you'd get versus the full-on enthusiast setup that you'd see from people in the 90s who were our age in the 90s, who could afford to have multiple CRTs on rigs and stuff setting up there. There's not much in the way between the two of them. So maybe, and I know, Neil, you'd love to have one of those. The modern ones are easy compared to those ones. Those ones are real labours to get it working. But there's nothing in between those back in the 90s at least. So maybe there's a room in the arcade for something which maybe wasn't the size of a Star Wars cabinet, maybe didn't take up the same amount of space as a double racing game did, but something where you had something more immersive. Maybe it was a canopy you stuck your head in and you had all the controls and you could look, you could see screens around you. Maybe something like that. Where it was a bit more expensive because it would have to be, but you get longer on it. Maybe you paid and you got 15 minutes on it. I don't know. I'm thinking an environmental cab, the cab you're immersed in. But I don't know if it could be made to work. Certainly this doesn't look as if it works. This looks to just be a normal arcade machine.
Certainly wasn't the first attempt. You can go all the way back to things like Atari's Red Baron, which was a vector-based flight sim. So, flight sims were tried on and off. And I remember I went to Sega, I think it was Sega World once. There was this huge 3-screen, like Boeing 747 landing simulator game, which was really impressive. But that was going the other way again. I know what you're getting at. You're thinking something like an upright battle zone type.
Yeah. But these things did exist. You could go for a flight simulator day in the 90s. They did exist. But something that would be in an arcade that you could go and play while you're in the arcade, that you didn't need to go and book a ticket for. You didn't have someone standing over you telling you what to do. You could just go and have fun with it. Maybe that could have made it work. But this attempt was lukewarm, I think. No wonder it didn't work. So yeah, the big thing that's missing, though, is the 300-page manual.
Yeah. Insert coin to start reading manual. £20 later, you finish reading the manual and you can start the game.
Press up twice to look at stats for planes that are not even in the game.
Yes. Identify the silhouette of 300 planes that aren't in the game. That was all part of the fun of it. But yeah, I'm still drawn to this arcade just because of the lovely... it's high resolution, it's smooth, but it's not texture mapped, and that I really quite enjoy that style of 3D graphics in flight sims. And unfortunately, it's in the US, so I don't think I'll get the chance ever to have a play on this machine myself. But do check out the blog. It's a wealth of technical information and just a fascinating machine to look at from an era before the era we were just talking about, modern consoles where everything's very PC-like, an era where things are much more bespoke and built to serve that particular function, and exciting and slightly mysterious. And I think that's a big factor of why we love the era of gaming that we do.
Thank you for that housekeeping jingle. Neil, who is it from?
That's from Woolsey1703, who's
thank you very much.
Done jingles before and has also been sending me tunes to use in my own episodes. The last episode I put out, I think, had 4 or 5 of his tunes in there. He's turning out some brilliant music for us. So thank you very much indeed.
I'd like to welcome on 4 new patrons. So thank you to Mark, Michael, Jonathan, and Alan. Thank you very much for signing up. We really appreciate your support. There's an update from LGR. So Clint has said that his vintage collection survived. He didn't think it was going to survive, but it did. And it's only his modern stuff like the PS5 that got hit. And since that stuff rubbish, it doesn't matter. A reminder, though, that while Clint is not able to make videos, it's a good time to catch up on his old ones and keep his channel numbers turning. And he does have an update on YouTube where he says others in Western NC, which is North Carolina in America, need way more help than me. So link in the show notes to his little update there. He's thinking about other people, not himself, because that's the type of guy he is.
Yeah, I was really pleased to see the pictures of storage boxes coming out of his storeroom with the big box games all fine. I mean, he's got a lot on his plate to deal with, but thankfully it doesn't have that piled on top as well. Soggy cardboard boxes.
On to briefs now. And a question from Good Punk 2 that had a bit of a discussion. Will CRTs ever get made again? And the answer, sadly, is no. The cost to spin up manufacturing them is staggeringly big. It won't happen. Best to make do with what's left and hope eventually display technology gets there. But an interesting discussion, an interesting question.
Dr. Local has linked to Nostalgia Nerd's video with first impressions of the Checkmate monitor because they are indeed starting to arrive. And Stephen Jones has made good on his promise to deliver on his Kickstarter, which was never in any doubt. He's certainly a man who has delivered and has a track record of delivering. So it's great to see them. Great to see the... It's a review, although Nostalgia Nerd does say he will return to it in future with a more detailed review when he's had more time to be hands-on with it. But certainly makes a good first impression.
Pajako has linked us to a Time Extension article saying that Nintendo is going after YouTube accounts which show games being emulated. Now, I'm a bit cautious about this. I think this is a little bit... because how do Nintendo know a game being shown is being emulated unless you're doing a video showing people how to emulate it? And that's different if you're showing people how to emulate it. And I can kind of understand that. But still, Nintendo continue to get a reputation for being heavy-handed with people.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with emulating, though, is there? I mean, if you're saying to someone, here's a link to ROMs that I've made available to you that you can download illegally, okay, but just the act of emulating, come on.
I know. I think it's when I think one of the videos that was taken down was a video on how to dump Switch games, and I think maybe that's, I don't know. They're so heavy-handed with things. It's difficult to be sympathetic to Nintendo when they stamp on absolutely everybody they can all the time.
Some self-reflection from Oliver number 9. Is this hobby turning into too much of a chore? An interesting discussion in which people discuss what they like to do with their machines, and others pitch in to talk about, well, actually, the breaking and the fixing is the hobby. It's the thing they like to do. It's the thing they get the most enjoyment from, keeping something running in much the same way I imagine running a Model T Ford is like. You don't go, hey guys, let's go on the M1 for a nice day trip in my Model T. It's more about, I can keep this thing going. Where do you get the parts from? Do you have to manufacture your own parts to keep these things going, and everything that surrounds that, and the community that builds up around it? So including the community that's taking part in that discussion. So check out that link and get involved.
Active Barracuda links one of these wonderful BBC clips that come out now and then. These little time capsules. It's from the 90s, and it's about Lara Croft at the height of her initial fame. We're talking about movies and so on, which of course did actually happen, and how popular she was. And the newsreader was just a little bit sniffy about Lara Croft at the start of it, which I thought was quite amusing.
SDMat22 warns us that the Internet Archive has been hacked and passwords compromised. The passwords were at least encrypted, but that's no guarantee of your own security. So please do make sure that if you are using the same password for Internet Archive for your other accounts, well, err on the safe side. Just get them changed.
Yeah, use a password manager. They're still under attack by nefarious internet, which no doubt Duncan will have to bleep. So hopefully the Internet Archive comes back. The Internet Archive is one of the wonders of the modern world. It's such a good thing. It's an important thing. And it shouldn't be taken down by on the internet. There is loads more on the subreddit. 2 weeks worth, in fact. Go and have a look. Go and submit your stories. Go and have an involvement. Go and have an involvement. Go and get involved with better English than me in the discussions. And click the little up and down arrows to decide what we'll talk about next week. What's the URL, Neil?
Reddit.com /r/ This Week in Retro.
Thank you very much. I've been ill recently. I am feeling better now, but being unwell seems to make me reach for games I'm comfortable with. So what started with me watching a Skyrim video while I was too ill to do anything has ended up with me playing Skyrim yet again. Todd Howard wins. But that leads me to this discussion from How to Geek, submitted by Squelch411. And it's a really interesting question. It does come up often, but it's a really interesting article written about it. Why do some games age poorly while others are timeless? And they've put age poorly in quotes, and I think it's because age poorly is such a common phrase. The article is by Sidney Butler, and it's a really good one. He's got several headings, and I think he nails it with them. He starts off by saying, a good game loop is forever. Now, game loop is a new term. I did a bit of Googling, and up to 2010, I could find the phrase used as a programming term with the definition, the game loop is the fundamental structure of most games. It repeats throughout the game, managing all necessary information and user input. But now the definition have changed. I'm not sure when it changed, but these days game loop means the basic process the player makes in a game, be it shoot a wave of enemies and get a score for how well you did and move on, or go clear out a dungeon, kill the boss and loot the chest and come back to town to prepare to do it again. is definitely a phrase that's popular now, game loop. He talks about we like our creature comforts as his next heading. And he singles out tank controls and says he hates them. And certainly that's a common thing for people to dislike tank controls. And he says there's no reason for them. You have something else instead. And I kind of get that. I think that once you play enough of a game with tank controls, you get used to it. But I think more about creature comforts and things like RTS, real-time strategy games, where if you go back to ones in the mid-90s, things that we take for granted aren't there. You go to highlight several units in Warcraft and you can't. You can't do it. You have to do them individually. And now that you can do that in a modern RTS or even an older one, but it makes the games less playable as a result. They don't age so well. The next section is 3D graphics often fail the test of time. And that's probably one of the most common things that's brought up, because 3D graphics do not pass the test of time. Pixel art is ageless, but if you go back to late 90s graphics, they're quite ugly. Although there is a bit of nostalgia for those these days coming back. Don't know. But where I think he comes up with the thing that really makes this article worth reading is his last heading. And it's the biggest section there. And it says, art direction trumps technology. And that's where I think he's hit the nail on the head. He's come up with something unique here. And his example is looking at the first Quake. And he says, and he shows his age when he says this, he says, which is a very early example of 3D graphics on home computers. Mm-hmm. No, I think maybe he's on the good side of 40. It's not an early example, but I take his point, though.
It was an important example,
yes,
because it was the big step from the pseudo 2.5D of Doom into a full 3D first-person shooter with texture maps and all the rest of it. There were other examples, but it certainly wasn't the first 3D game.
But it's that's not the point, though. The point is it's a fantastic example of how you can have a singular vision and get it into the finished game. Reese and I talked about this a few weeks ago. We were talking about reading the John Romero book and how they managed to get, when they brought on Adrian Carmack, them and John Carmack and John Romero managed to get their vision of Doom and Quake with the heavy metal and the iconography and the whole vibe of it through into a finished game. And you can't necessarily do that easily now, because there's hundreds or even thousands of people involved in making games and different platforms and assets and all the rest of it. We had that in Doom. We had it in Ultima. We had it in lots of games back then that have aged well as a result. But companies like Ubisoft seem to be struggling now. And might it be because they don't have that art direction getting the whole, encapsulating the whole product? I don't know. Maybe they need to relearn that. Neil, what do you think?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, Quake's an interesting example because it's very brown. I actually like the art direction on Doom, I think, better than Quake. Not that Quake's a bad game, or Duke Nukem or something like that. And we're talking about an era here where, or types of games here in Doom and Quake and things like that, where, first of all, they created a stunning engine and then they layered a game on top. And that's no different to the modern game. You know, they make the tools now to create the worlds, and then it's up to the script writers, the artists, to make the game. But you still need a cohesive vision from the top down, don't you? You still need an artistic director. It's like a movie, like making a movie.
I mean, Quake was made from John Carmack's D&D campaign. So the game, and okay, the game was made to the engine, but the engine was also made to the game. The two were entwined.
Sure, I'm sure they had
these days are not so much. You get Unity, and Unity is what you have, and you have to work with it, or whichever else, Unreal or whatever.
I get what you mean. Yeah. So Unity, you know, you can make a racing game, you can make a space game, you can make a 2D platformer with it. Quake would have been made with the sequel to Doom in mind and all of the features and functions that it needed to complete that. Yeah, I get that. Art direction, when it's done right, it's utterly timeless. It's why I've always had a soft spot for cel-shaded 3D games on those earlier 3D consoles to make up for a lack of polygon power, that a distinctive style with cel shading, while still having, you get the best of both worlds. You get the freedom of a 3D world, but you get the art of 2D. And you get a really nice sort of quality mix in games like Jet Set Radio, Beautiful Joe, Paper Mario, and I'm going to say it, my guilty pleasure, Dragon's Lair 3D. Have you ever played that? It is not a great game. It's not a great game, but I'd always wanted to see the old Laserdisc game with some actual playability mixed in. And it does it's not a great game, but it does a good job of bringing the 2D Laserdisc animation into a 3D world. It's quite nice to look at. Look at Cuphead more recently. That had a very distinctive style that will never age because, well, it was based on the 1930s, 1940s animation, and it looks great today. But that's just one direction to go in. The other is the one I mentioned earlier, high-resolution, untextured flight sims like the F-15 arcade, like Flanker, games like that. Really like those. And a lot of games that clung on to 2D when everyone else was jumping onto 3D, of course, have aged well. Things like Broken Sword, which is now being remastered, re-released using the original art assets and looking more stunning than ever. The Last Express, with its rotoscoping style.
LucasArts games, of course, and they've aged so well. Monkey Island and so on, timeless because they had that art direction. I think this article from Sydney Butler has put the finger on what ages so well. Is having a unified vision of what the game will look like that comes through in the game itself. Is that the art direction?
Yeah. Saying that, I've been seeing a lot of articles recently about the next generation of GPUs and how AI is going to be woven into the hardware and become a big part of it, and how some interesting things I've been reading about how modern games are going to have a direction, but the AI is going to flesh them out. Now, when you think about the amount of detail that needs to go into a modern game, that's actually not a bad idea. If you want every blade of grass, every tree, every leaf to look a bit different, then let AI go to town with it and make that happen. That's brilliant. And that will bring very realistic worlds. But it also means we could probably bring up something like Quake and say, hey, GPU, present this in a 1940s Disney style for me and see what it comes up with. That's kind of interesting. Set your own art direction on retro games.
So AI designing games won't cut it. You need someone at the top with a vision on what it's going to look like. But AI is a great tool, and we should and we will see more of it. Unfortunately, what we're going to see is the same stupid mistakes that people are making again and again with it. They're putting AI at the top of the chain rather than the middle or the bottom. If you're making an open world, immersive RPG just now, if you're Todd Howard making Skyrim 2, or also known as the Elder Scrolls 6, if you're making Skyrim 2 Electric Boogaloo, then you've got all these cave walls to generate. You've got all this grass, all these trees, all these bricks, all these roads. Why wouldn't...
All these NPC conversations.
Yes. No. Well, why wouldn't you get all the roads and bricks and all the rest of it made uniquely by AI? Why wouldn't you do that and just have someone going through it and making sure it's okay? I mean, that's where AI would help.
Oh, you're talking about AI doing it and someone checking rather than AI on the fly, because then you get into a position where everyone is actually having a slightly different experience when they're playing the game.
Yeah. I know the article you're talking about, and it was showing, was it not BioShock it was showing? And it was totally changed, and it looked, oh no.
A glimpse of the future.
No, a nightmare. One of the key reasons, though, I think that there's such value in 8, 16 and 32-bit games is it's very possible for someone to get their own vision through to the end product. And these days, it's so much more difficult. If you look at Jet Set Willy from Matthew Smith, what you were seeing was the inside of Matthew Smith's mind when you were playing that. That was why it was so enthralling. But games now... Not so much. You're not seeing an individual's vision. You're just seeing a porridge full of slop. Have a read at this article. It's a well-written and interesting article. So thank you for submitting it to us.
Time now for question of the week. And the question we asked 2 weeks ago was, we looked at a list of 10, why did I have to remind myself, 10 gaming innovations. Do you remember that, Dave? And we suggested some of our own gaming innovations, such as wireless glasses. You're wearing a pair now, Dave, aren't you?
Yeah, wireless glasses. I can't do it headphones on.
And we asked you, what is your most important innovation in gaming and why? So you've had 2 weeks to answer. Are we out of contest mode, Dave?
No, because I'm blocked on Reddit. Your request has been blocked due to a network policy.
Oh, I had that earlier today, yeah. Okay.
So Reddit is clearly having an issue. Neil couldn't get in earlier on, and I could, and now I can't get in.
Okay, right. I'll just read them as they come then. Our top answer comes from Happy Coding ZX as emulation. The first time I saw a very early version of MAME running Pac-Man, I knew that it was a game changer, particularly when it came to older arcade games that had all but disappeared from public access. Emulation right from the start was preservation. And that's backed up by Pajako6502, talking about when he first saw his Amiga running a ZX Spectrum game. And Smoke Zealous Ideal 148 also agrees. So emulation, top of the list. Yeah. Can't believe we didn't think of it ourselves, actually. That's a big one. Yeah. Next answer, Lord Borak 316. The chair. Gaming on the back of a donkey was always difficult.
Donkey?
Donkey. You're a donkey, Dave.
You're a donkey too.
He always calls me
that.
For Skit, the mouse. Have you ever tried playing Lemmings or Cannon Fodder with a joystick? Yeah, something I really struggle with is console ports of games that used a mouse. SimCity, Lemmings, Cannon Fodder. Makes me shudder thinking about it.
I've got access now, Neil. I've managed to get access on my phone.
Okay. Well, I think I've done the top three, but do you want to pick out any others that stand out for you?
The CD. Keister Scheib says the CD, enough space for better graphics and few small video sequences, no more diskette change orgies. And I'm thinking about the Talkie adventure.
Well, some of those
Day
early
of the Tentacle
adventures, like that, you didn't even need to install. You could just run them straight off the CD, couldn't you? Yeah. Which was fantastic when you only had hard disks of the size they were back in the day. Orin, hello, John, says, my most important personal innovation in gaming was creating an entire human interface device to allow me to play Descent. It consisted of adding a second analog left-hand joystick, 2 extra analog inputs, repurposed Trust keyboard wedge controller, all sorts. He's basically put together his own personal Descent gear. And someone says, Cubicle Nate says, how can I upvote this more than 10 times?
Collie Activist has a good one. The high score table. You've just got to beat your friend's score. And that one, I know that works for you with track and field.
Yeah, absolutely. LAN play. Someone says, Robert Crowther says, mini consoles. Someone had to say it.
Thank you, Robert.
Pajako6502, motion tracked controllers, the Wiimote. The digital joystick as opposed to analog. Rowan Forest. Yeah. We'll end with Rowan Forest's top 10. Number 10, sexy video game covers. 9,
Barbarian.
Colors. 8, Rob Hubbard. Just the man himself.
Give us a Rob Hubbard tune. Dun,
dun, dun, dun, dun, dun, dun.
That was the same tune at different points in it from was. On to you on the run.
I was going to make that question of the week. Name that tune. 7, the joystick. 6, disposable time. 5, the computer. 4, Dungeons and Dragons. 3, sound. 2, graphics. 1, Dave's Housekeeping.
Yes, number 1.
There we go. So thank you to everyone who took part. You can participate at reddit.com/r/This Week in Retro. You can also submit any interesting news stories which are retro related, which we may pick up or we may cover in briefs. And you can participate in this week's question of the week, which is, Dave?
Which game has aged the best?
Which game has aged the best? Wow. That's quite a big open-ended question. Which game has aged the best? It doesn't have to be from any particular era. Nope. Could be 10 years ago. It could be 40 years ago. Which game has aged the best? And should we throw in and why?
Oh, yeah. You need to tell us why.
And why. Let's put that
especially if you want people to agree with you. You need to justify it.
Yeah.
What should people be doing now, though, Neil? Right as soon as they finish this, what should they be doing? They
should be going to the link to watch More Fun Making It's all-day stream, in which Dave and I will appear. Have lots of fun watching us and others. Or just go to Twitch and look for More Fun Making It, and you'll find him there. I assume it's on Twitch. Is it on Twitch or is it on YouTube?
Yeah, on Twitch. Yeah, on Twitch.
Yeah, you'll find him. Go and do that. Go to our subreddit as well. And if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/This Week in Retro. And we will
like and subscribe, though. Like and subscribe. We want to hit 10,000. 10,000 this year.
10,000. Smash that bell. See you next time. Bye-bye. Donkeys waving.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
This Week in Retro was presented by Neil from RMC The Cave and Dave. It was produced by me, Duncan Styles. The podcast version of the show is available through your favourite podcaster, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And the video version is available on the This Week in Retro YouTube channel.
Join our community subreddit at r/This Week in Retro to suggest and vote on the stories we cover on the show. If you watch This Week in Retro on YouTube, please give us a like and subscribe to help us reach new viewers.
If you enjoy our show and would like to support it, then please check out the link to our Patreon page in the show notes or description. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time for more up-to-date news for out-of-date tech.